In the Keoua Desert on the island of Hawaii, there is a field of footprints fossilized in volcanic ash. They have been there for more than 2 centuries. They are clear enough to count more than 1,700 individual impressions mapped and photographed and included in the official site descriptions for most of the 20th century. For 80 years, the story attached to those prints was the one Thomas Jagger published in 1919. These were the last steps of Keoua's warriors fleeing an eruption that overtook them. It went into the textbooks. It went into the ranger talks. By any reasonable measure, it was settled. What I want to look at is the assumption that settled it and what happened when someone finally tested it with a tape measure 80 years after the fact. In November 1790, Hawaii is in civil war. 3 rival chiefs are fighting for control of the Big Island, and Kilauea, commanding the southern faction, is pulling his army home. His route runs south through the saddle of Kilauea. He stops at the caldera rim for several days. The ground is shaking. Boulders are being thrown from the summit. Ash is falling across the trail. He makes offerings at the edge, divides his forces into 3 columns, and sends them through the corridor at intervals. The corridor is called Namakanipayo. On one side, open ground. On the other, the lava field of Keeaumoku, volcanic rock frozen mid-flow centuries earlier, never softened by weather. To step into it barefoot is to cut your foot open. To run across it is not possible. The corridor offers movements in 2 directions, forward or back. The inference was coherent. The eruption date was established. The army's route through this exact corridor was documented in oral history. The footprints were in the right desert, in the right ash layer, along the right trail. Jagger was not speculating recklessly. He was drawing the conclusion the evidence, as he read it, fully supported. The error here was not carelessness. It was the absence of one specific check on evidence that seemed to need none. And that is the harder kind of mistake to catch, because nobody thinks to look for what appears to already be settled. To understand what happened in that corridor, you need to understand what Kilauea was holding inside itself in 1790 and how long it had been building. Around the year of 1500, the floor of the Kilauea caldera collapsed, dropping between 1,600 and 2,300 feet straight down. The collapse cut through the water table. Over the following 3 centuries, groundwater seeped into the base of the volcanic system. A body of water accumulated in direct contact with rising magma. When magma at that temperature encounters that volume of water in a confined space, the conversion is not gradual. The water flashes to steam. Steam at that pressure occupies approximately 1,700 times the volume of the water it replaced. Inside a sealed system, that expansion has one outlet, through whatever is above it. By November 1790, 3 centuries of pressure had been building. When it gave, the eruption column punched between 7 and 9 miles into the sky, visible from the Kauai, 56 miles away on the opposite coast. More than 2,000 boulders, some 5 feet across, were thrown clear of the vent. Then the column collapsed. A column that height does not fall straight down. The material inside, gas, steam, ash, pulverized rock, is still moving outward when the vertical structure fails. That energy redirects along the ground. A base surge, a low, dense, fast-moving current of superheated gas and volcanic debris traveling across the terrain rather than above it, following the contour of the Earth. The surge in the Keoua Desert moved at close to 100 miles an hour. Inside it, microscopic particles of volcanic glass were suspended in superheated steam. The surge passed through the corridor without crushing what was in its path. It replaced the breathable air with something that was not. When the men gasped, they drew volcanic glass and superheated steam into their lungs simultaneously. The glass met the moisture in the lung tissue. A thin paste formed across the alveoli, the sites where oxygen crosses into blood. The lungs sealed from inside. They drowned in an open air under an open sky. Because the surge did not displace them, The bodies remained exactly where death overtook them. That's why the third column, marching behind, found the second exactly as it had perished. The deadly surge literally preserved the scene it created. The logical conclusion is clear. If the famous footprints belonged to these warriors, their bodies would have been found right on top of those tracks, but there were no bodies in the footprint field. Between 1998 and 2003, forensic archaeologists returned to the footprint field and did what had not been done in 80 years of continuous study. They measured the prints. They mapped 1,773 impressions. 405 were clear enough for reliable analysis. The principle they applied is standard in forensic identification. Foot length is approximately 15% of total body height. Across a sample this large, the ratio produces a reliable central value. The average height of the people who left those prints, 4 feet 11 inches. The recorded average height of a Hawaiian warrior at the end of the 18th century, 5 feet 10 inches. The measurement did not require a new excavation or a new discovery. It required a ruler applied to evidence that had been sitting in the open desert for 80 years of study. When it was finally applied, the answer did not match the story the site had been telling. 4 feet 11 inches is not a warrior. It is a woman, a child, a trader moving between settlements. The footprint field records the passage of civilian travelers on the trade route between Hilo and Kau, people who had been crossing that corridor for generations and who crossed it on this particular day while the ash from the early eruption phase was still wet, less than an inch of gray volcanic mud, soft enough to accept a clear impression from the bare foot moving at a walking pace. They crossed, they kept moving, they made it out. By the time the second column of Keoua's army entered the corridor, those people were gone. The chronology, as the evidence now puts it together, runs something like this. Civilian travelers crossed the corridor while the ash was still wet. They left 1,700 prints in the mud. The ash dried and hardened into rigid crust. The first column of Keoua's army moved through. The eruption was already underway. Ash, shaking ground, boulders thrown from the summit. They survived and continued south. The second column entered the corridor. Below them, the magma reached the accumulated water. The surge came low across the ground. The lava field of Keeaumoku ran the full eastern length of the corridor. 2 directions available. No time. They died where they stood. The ground beneath them was already hard. Their feet left no impressions. The third column arrived days later. They found the second column where it fell. No graves were made. They kept moving south. The famous footprints belonged to people Keoua's soldiers never saw. The footprint field at Kau is still there. The prints are still readable. What the measurement established is not only who made the prints, it established what kind of record the footprint field actually is. For a century, this was the memorial to the dead of November 1790. Every print in it was made by someone who walked out.